Now, ladies and gentlemen, you would have noticed that earlier when we went on our global tour, it came from just 4 of the world's continents. And that, of course, is because we're now about to hear from the biggest marina market globally, and that is, of course, the United States. The US is the global leader in marina development, investment, and innovation, and has a significant influence over global trends in the sector. Looking into this market, into sustainability, digital transformation, and the evolution of customer expectations across the sector, I'd like to welcome ICOMIA President Frank Hugelmeyer back to the stage. Frank.
Let's bring our panelists up here, and we'll need some handheld mics, if we can get some up there. So I'm going to do a brief just overview of the market, and then we've got 3 very special guests, really the who's who of the CEOs in the marina industry in the United States. Sans, I would say Brunswick. If we had Brunswick up here, we'd have the top 4 CEOs in the entire industry here. With us are Brett McGill. He's the CEO of MarineMax, world's largest lifestyle retailer of recreational boats and yachts, and he's also runs the parent company of IGY Marinas. We've got Bryan Redmond. He's the CEO of Suntex Marinas, one of North America's leading marina management companies and the owner of over 90 properties in the United States. And then, of course, you all have heard from Baxter Underwood, CEO of Safe Harbor Marina, and that's the world's largest marina business, and also the new owner of Monaco Marine. So congratulations on that. I'm going to go join my colleagues over there and grab one of the mics. But before I start, I'm going to give you a little bit of the U.S. market. First off, if you're interested in market data, you can scan the QR code, and that'll take you to the National Marine Manufacturers Association, a special website for the World Marina Conference. In there is data on the U.S. market that we've provided that gives you sales, participation, trends of that sort. Also, for those who do not know, as ICOMIA board president, my day job is president and CEO of the National Marine Manufacturers Association in the United States, with the largest trade group of our kind actually worldwide. And we're very fortunate to have these 3 CEOs who have joined us and are part of the membership within the industry. In the US, we have a $1.2 trillion outdoor recreation economy measured by the US government. It's 2.3% of the US GDP. That annual 1.2 trillion contribution to the United States economy also represents 3.3% of all jobs. The largest driver of the outdoor recreation economy in the United States is recreational boating and fishing. We have a $230 billion industry in the United States. There's over 36,000 businesses, overwhelmingly a small business community across the industry and across North America, and over 800,000 jobs. So I look forward to having the chat with our 3 esteemed colleagues and really this all-star panel.
Excellent.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it. Brett, it's good to see you. Baxter,
good to see you.
How you doing? Great job earlier, by the way. We really, really enjoyed it. You know, I think to start right now, it would be helpful for everyone in the room to really just understand. I gave, real quick snapshots of your bios, but can you each go along and just give an idea of your footprint, size of business, company, and maybe the burning, issue right now you're thinking about as a business leader. So why don't we start with you, Bryan?
Oh, great. Thank you so much. Well, first, before I start, I just want to thank you, Frank, for having Baxter and Brett and I on the stage together. It's such an honor to be here with all of you, and Venice has been amazing, so thank you guys so much. Just by background, I grew up in Austin, Texas. My family actually built a marina and a water park. So my first job as a teenager was actually being a deckhand and working in the cash register. So I've really been around the business my entire working life. I've been fortunate with that. Suntex today is we're 96 marinas that we operate in 16 states. We have about 2,200 employees. 1,400 of those are full-time, and then we gross up to 2,200 during the summer season. And yeah, I think I heard it from Ferretti today and others and everybody. I think when we started Suntex, the concept of it really was to take an industry, marinas that had been really operated as parking lots for a very long time, and try to implement a real hospitality feel, build a sense of community where everybody, it really is your third place. We'll talk about this further today, but we really aren't competing with each other over here. We really are. I tell the team all the time, we're competing for people's time at the end of the day. So I look forward to kind of talking more about that.
Great. Brett McGill, CEO and President of MarineMax. We have about 3,500 people across the world. And mostly MarineMax is a boat dealership in the U.S. We sell boats, almost 7,000 boats a year. But we have IGY Marinas, we have some manufacturing, and we do a lot of different things at our stores, including marinas within our stores. So the company's grown. My dad started the company over 50 years ago at a gas station lot selling Sea Rays. So kind of the great American story. And I grew up in the business with a technology background. I was in the technology field and then came back to the family business, which then became MarineMax. So, and my dad set out to kind of change the industry, he said. And it was to make the boating lifestyle better for the family and not just kind of a guy's thing and you work on your boat and then you go boating. So I think you'll hear a theme about us talking about the lifestyle and making things better for boaters, but that's still a burning thing for our company as well. So
that's super cool. I've known of Brett and Brett a little bit for years. I came all the way to Italy to learn that his father started the trend that we're on now, and it's very cool. It's working. So, unlike these two gentlemen, I didn't grow up in the boating industry. I grew up in a real estate family. I grew up in Texas, not too far from Bryan, but we were more of a horse family, less of a boat family, because there's not much water in Dallas. So I've been learning about the industry as we've gone on this journey. I've been with this particular business since it started in 2015. I think we're 4,500 people now, serving about 49,000 families throughout the U.S. and Caribbean and now in Europe. So very grateful to be with you.
It's great. So right now, if you looked at where the U.S. market is right now, we're about 10% down over last year over year. The upper end is holding steady. The yacht side, sport fishing, but we have our major categories are sort of in pontoon, which are more inland lakes, wake sport. We're seeing double-digit declines in those large categories across the country right now. And so, Brett, for you, as the leading boat dealer anywhere, what are the biggest headwinds that you're seeing right now in your portfolio, and how are the overall sales holding up? How is that comparing to rental and charter and things like that within your portfolio? And where are you seeing the bright spots in the market?
Well, so speaking about boat sales, Baxter was quick to remind me why I decided to get into the marina space with IGY, because the boat sales is very cyclical. And, MarineMax, we've been, a public company for over 25 years. But, most of the businesses we've acquired are family businesses. Like I said, my dad started but we have businesses we have acquired that were 75 years old. So we've been through the ups and downs, the great financial crisis. And right now in our industry in the U.S., boat sales they're tough. They've been down quarter after quarter, and right when everybody predicts it's going to be okay, it continues to be down. And I'll tell you, after COVID, we thought it would be down a little bit, but it just hasn't quite recovered. So that's been tough on our segment, but we can handle it. And I'll tell you, it's gone across everything, all segments really, even up into the larger yachts. However, the marina business, it's why we went into it, has remained steady. We're all having to work hard and try to, focus on it. So that's remained steady. Our super yacht businesses, which I forgot to mention earlier, Fraser, Northrop & Johnson, very important part of our company and the integration. Those continue to do well. The charter especially, charter in the Med this season was very, very strong. And kind of a nuance to that is the large charters, several $100,000 plus was very, very strong this summer. So, that part of the business is holding up well. But, the boat sales segment's down. It always comes back. You cannot take away the customer's desire to be out on the water, be boating, and with their family. So we're having to readjust.
Yeah, I think this is important. When you look at the U.S. market, you've got 95% of all boats sold in the U.S. or made in the U.S. About 85 to 90% of those are 26 feet and below. So it's a very large family-driven market. And, Bryan, you really cater to that. You and I have talked a lot about consumer acquisition, the changing consumer, how are we going to thrive and survive in this changing dynamic. And I know you've invested very heavily in consumer experiences, sort of what we heard earlier from Baxter and others who've been up on the stage about the importance, the Ferretti conversation about experiences. It's not just for the upper end in the U.S., it's critical in that mass market portion of our industry, and that's where your marinas tend to live. Where are you seeing the biggest ROI in your marinas? What's driving consumer acquisition for you? And what type of experiences are really starting to pay off?
Great question. And I think it starts with first defining what the marina really is. And because you could look at it again as a place you park a boat, but I think it's bigger than that. So when we talk about consumer acquisition, I really think of the marina as a place to give people access to the water. And that's not just for the boat owner, that's for people that want to come and have a drink or have a nice meal. It's somebody who may want to just take a paddleboard out. It could be somebody that, we look at the top of our sales funnel, something we got involved in about 10 years ago. We refer to it as a circle of boating, but it's our boat rental and boat club business is the best way that we found to give people access to try something that, again, if you didn't grow up with it, it is intimidating. So how do we get a younger generation? How do we get a more diverse generation in? I think it's, again, just looking at the marina as a place to access the water. Everybody wants to be around the water generally. And with that in mind, again, it's a lot of the things Ferretti talked about this morning. Baxter, I know, talks about it a lot as well. It's that overall create an experience, invest in things that are going to create an emotional attachment, and then measure it and see how you're doing. We measure NPS, we have for a long time. The team does a great job of that, but those are the food and beverage, those are all the service offerings, and it's really about events. It's a lot of things, and it's a different answer in every market, but how do we create a reason why people want to invite their friends to come be with them? Where are they going to be? Where are they going to be that third place is really the simple answer.
So when you're looking at new consumer acquisition, it's different per each market, and how do you measure that right now? And are you getting to the data around demographics, particularly in the U.S., which right now are massively changing and their behaviors are changing significantly? How are you getting to the bottom of that question, or is that a work in progress?
Well, it's always a work in progress, that's for sure. I think around the demographics, I think you've taught me this. 16% I think are diverse overall, I think is the stat, whereas our country is closer to 40. So to me, that's huge opportunity, that's there, and that's the way we kind of think about it. But I think it's all of those things. We need to do a better job of measuring that on a regular basis, and I think we're on the cusp of being able to do a lot of that. And then we can work with you on NMMA about the Discover Boating projects and all those things. And I also think it's something, and I think it's upon us over here as the large marine owners to be, Baxter said this earlier, and I thought it was right on point, collaborative with everybody in our industry. We can't just look at each other as competitors. At the end of the day, We need to be working with the manufacturers. We need to be working with the people selling the boats. At the end of the day, it's all the same customer. And we need to make that, we need to do things that are gonna create more potential boaters that get into lifestyle. And we need to make sure that experience from the time they buy that first boat all the way till they get to us at the marina is a great experience at the end of the day.
Yeah, interesting. You know, Baxter, you and I on the phone have talked a lot about foundational shifts and what's happening in the market. You referenced it in the early part of your presentation keynote. You know, we're seeing global economic policy change the landscape. We're seeing access to capital and shifts on that front, both from not only from a business standpoint, but also from a consumer standpoint, being able to get into the lifestyle. We're seeing massive shifts in consumer behavior and purchasing behavior. You know, how are these mega shifts impacting your strategic approach right now, and particularly your focus on the customer journey? So as you start to acquire a customer and you're bringing them along the experience within your marinas, what are the biggest drivers of change and ROI right now that you're measuring and looking to kind of optimize?
It's a complicated question. Our new shareholder loves data and is very has a lot of good questions that I get to try to answer. And we've gone through about a 6-month process with some more expensive consultants to try to figure out about that customer journey and to try to segment it. There's a convening thing which I will try to offer, and Bryan's hitting it dead on, which is that the people that are coming into boating today, as different from maybe generations past, don't necessarily have someone to teach them about boating. And nevertheless, they want to be involved, but they need an entrance which is attainable from an education perspective. You know, there are terms that they don't know. It's not approachable like maybe getting a license to drive a vehicle. They need an access point to the water, and the marina can serve as that. And so even as we look at the different types of vessels that we have and the different types of boaters that we have, which have different demographics and they have different growth profiles, and but Brett would have forgotten more about that than we'll ever know. The question that I'm trying to answer is, how do we get more people at the top of the funnel, to his point? Because our best method for growing occupancy is keeping existing boaters in longer. When we started the business, the average tenure, which is the word we use for how long someone stayed with us at a given marina, was 5.4 years. Today, it's 8.1 years. And I was going to reference that this morning as I think that's evidence that their experience has gotten better because they're paying more each of those 8.1 years than they were at the beginning. So they must be having, something's going right. But they're eventually going to age out, and we know that because our demographic as an industry is older than a lot of consumer demographics. So we have to be thinking about ways to bring other generations to the water and educate them on the lifestyle that they can have, so they have a point of entry. Boat clubs, I think, are a really good one. I don't know if anybody from Brunswick's here or not, but they do a good job with that. There are some others that we're exploring, but that's something we're spending a lot of time thinking about.
Yeah, we've seen a huge explosion in the last 5 years in boat clubs in the United States, and I don't have the number off the top, but I for some reason 400's coming to mind. It's a big, big number as to where we're seeing gateways into introducing people into the lifestyle. One of the barriers, and this isn't in the questions that we sort of were circulating around, but the conversations that we've been having today, all three of us, the infrastructure issue is real. We are seeing in the United States, and particularly down in Florida, redevelopment of the coastal areas, and you're right, there's a lot of coastal population and more coming. COVID made a boom in America along the coast and along waterfront communities. But what was, there was a casualty there, and that was a lot of access to boating. Marinas were wiped out from redevelopment and not created. We've seen government regulations be very difficult for all three of you to really be able to expand or really optimize your marinas and that portion of your business. You know, what needs to happen to really move the return on investment? Because if we're able to tap that untapped consumer component that both you and Baxter were talking about, and I know, Brett, you're hyper-focused on consumer acquisition, we have to have somewhere to put the boats. And it was probably the biggest governor of sales during COVID, in the COVID boom. And it's continuing to be the #1 conversation I'm hearing across boat manufacturers, marinas, small marinas, large marinas. What's our solution here?
Who wants to take that first? It's a tough one.
I'll start with a comment kind of off what you were saying. During COVID in the U.S., we were talking about a little over 300,000 new boaters a year in, so it ended up being over 1 million, and that's an incredible thing. So we get all these new boaters in, and I think there's some data out there. How do you keep them? Of course, we're working on how we keep them, service them, give them access to water, but it's a big challenge. And also the big challenge is, you know, all these people that had boats, and now we're finally getting back in the cycle to look to upgrade. But the access to water has been a big challenge. You guys can comment, but I know from a boat sales standpoint, you know, when we look at data, there's a lot of slips, but they're not always in the markets where everybody is. You go to Naples, you buy a boat from us, and people are like, I'll buy the Boston Whaler, but I need a place to put it. And so in these hot markets, it's tough, and I think the same goes across with Europe. So, you know, the amount of new boaters we brought in and how we service them, and also all the existing boaters and keeping them, is a challenge ahead for us.
So what's your occupancy right now? That's where it sort of goes towards, of how much of your portfolio is 100% full versus how much your portfolio has open to buy?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll take a shot, Baxter, and you can chime in here too. I mean, occupancy a little bit tricky, and it's part of the answer to this question. In the U.S. right now, it's extremely difficult to build a new marina from scratch if it wasn't a marina prior. What we can do, and it's fairly simple in terms of permitting, is rebuild the marinas that were there to bring them back to today's standard, bring them to where the boats have gone. They need more power, they need to be longer, all those things. We have a ton of success in doing that, and that's where our focus is. I think it needs to continue to be focused. More education, us working collaboratively with your organization, and teaching the governments that having a longer term, whether to access to the water, whether it's through a concession lease, those kind of things, all of those help drive, you know, larger institutional investment to help you go drive. But I think we can attack a lot of it by taking what are effectively functionally obsolete slips and turning those into where the market demand is today. We'll solve a lot of it. And I think there's a lot of that opportunity in the U.S. for sure. Because a lot of the marinas were built in the 60s and 70s. They're at the end of their useful life. So that's the #1 way we can attack it. I think longer term outlook, we do need to work together at the federal level to address permitting and try to make it a easier process to get through, you know, for the right projects. That's a lot harder said than done, but I think that's something, if you look at the next 10 plus years, you know, we need to be looking at that as well.
Baxter, what about you? How do you look at the occupancy right now, and are you seeing a mismatch of where opportunity is versus where you're open to sell is?
Yeah, Bryan nailed it. So we're 84% occupied or 16% vacant, but we have wait lists at 88% of the marinas. I had an old chairman who used to like to quote that on earnings calls. He'd say, we're 88% wait list. And it was like, hold on a second. How can you be 84% occupied and have 88% wait list? Well, the issue is that the slip capacity hasn't kept up with the demand for the vessels. Over the last 30 years, the vessels in the United States have been getting longer and wider because all the growth is on the bigger vessels. And actually, below 30 feet, they're in decline. I mean, there's probably some exceptions to that, but as a general rule, they actually have a negative CAGR over the last 30 years. The slips are more costly to upgrade, and a lot of times they didn't have the data to push that demand. So across the country where we have slips below 30 feet, there, you know, we go down in rate and we still can't get any activity because there's nobody there with that boat. On the flip side is, somebody buys a new larger vessel, like Ferretti or something that is looking for a 80, 100-foot slip, and they're not going to be able to find it. They're going to have to get on a wait list, realistically. So we have 29 locations out of our 149 currently that have reconfiguration CapEx projects that are scheduled, and we're working our way through permitting, or we've broken ground, but we're literally reconfiguring, remapping the slips.
Yeah, very interesting. This is the burning issue right now. And for those who don't know, a large percentage of the United States is a boat trailer market. So people are storing their boats close to home or nearby or at Brett's facility or and the other marinas in and around the country. And that mix is, we've definitely seen the growth in the upper end because the margin is there, right? The return on investment, the capital investors are there as well. So this is sort of the pressure we're really dealing with in the United States and making sure that we've got that lower end, a lot of folks coming in at the bottom of that funnel that then can transfer to buying 2, 3, 4, 5 boats. Maybe that market's shifting to more of a trial market or a sharing market. I know you've made some investments there. You've got a lot of partnerships in that area as well, Brett, and I know you do as well, Baxter. How much of your business is now moving into what you look at as a rental or a sharing economy versus an ownership economy?
Well, for us, we're really have kind of stayed out of that business. That sounds negative, just we didn't have the staffing and the people. But you look at Freedom Boat Club, that's been positive to our business, because if somebody joins a club, they're likely to buy a boat. It's a numbers game. Fill the funnel, get 100 people in the boat club, you're going to get a handful that want to buy a boat. So that's been good for our business, and I think Brunswick's really grown with it. It's good for marinas, but I think, so it's additive to our business, and it's growing.
Yeah, absolutely. We started the Circle of Boating 10 years ago now with that in mind, and we measure conversion. So we measure conversion from rental to club, and we measure conversion from club to who's going to ultimately buy a boat and become a long-term.
What are you seeing there?
I'd like the conversion to be better. The demand has, since COVID, has skyrocketed, and I think that's partly because our average renter is probably in the early 30s. Our average boat club members in the 40s, and our average boat owners in the 50s, as you kind of all know. So we're seeing that natural shift. I also think the younger generation has shown they do prefer experiences, and they're at least going in until they understand it. The rental makes more sense to them. The club makes more sense to them versus just diving right in to $1 million plus investment. So I think there's more and more of it. I know there's a friend here in the crowd who's actually building marinas specifically for Brunswick and Freedom Boat Club, just to give them access to the water, in particular in Florida. So there's lots of things pointing to where there's strong demand there, and we got to figure out we got to work again together with the manufacturers. We need to figure out the operations with more captains. We got to make the experience good to maintain that customer all the way through, and we'll all benefit from it.
So how's that changing for you, Baxter, in terms of the mix that are ownership versus sort of charter business? And are you seeing that there a material shift occurring in that area?
As a practical matter, and similar to where Brett is in terms of thinking about the consumer, we try to focus on, we have very few commercial tenants. Less than 5% of the business is what we consider commercial. And those are typically folks that are selling boats. We don't do a lot of charter business because we want that long-term relationship with the family and want to be able to serve them in multiple locations. But the boat clubs have been fantastic for us. In 2016, I was one of the voices that were in our organization was a little bit nervous about the boat clubs, because I feared that maybe some of our owners would say, I'd rather be a boat club member because I don't have to carry the cost of the vessel. So we had 2 or 3 locations that were, I think they were Freedom and Carefree. Those are boat clubs in the United States. And we watched them for a year to try to decide if we had more people coming from the boat clubs and buying boats and becoming members of the opposite. And in that first year, it was about 2 to 1 people converting from, they were first a member of the boat club, and then they decided to buy a vessel and have a contract with us, and, versus the one person who said, okay, I'm getting out of this and going back. So today we have 55 boat clubs that have on average, 30, 35 boats throughout the country, and they're a great funnel. Bryan does it directly, which I think is incredible. We haven't had the capacity to do that, but they act as a great funnel for us, and I'm very much a fan of the model. Still a little bit nervous about how it performs in a recession, but they're certainly a great feeder to the marinas.
Yeah, well, that sort of brings me to one of the topics that's certainly been common in the side conversations here, and that's the global challenges that we've seen from a tariff and an unpredictable market. Brett, I know you've been dealing with a lot of these issues, and we talked about that earlier today, and there's really even some, depending on what a Supreme Court ruling might do, could really create more uncertainty. We know the president continues to like using the bat. He's not going to stop doing that for the next 3 years, though we do feel, I think everyone in America feels like it's settling out. What's your take? What's been the impact on your business, and how do you see this impacting your business going forward?
Well, yeah, the tariffs, we'll speak to that, have been a major impact to us. In fact, when it first started, it was more of the impact of the uncertainty, which you'll hear me say that probably a few times. Uncertainty is just tough on the boat buyer, right? What's this mean? And that's interest rates and so on. So tariffs were an impact because of the uncertainty. And then as some things started getting set, more in stone, I would say, where, hey, this is the tariff for the EU or whatnot, that seemed to help, but it's still a big challenge. You have tariff. We're a huge Azimut dealer in the U.S. We're the only Azimut dealer in the U.S. Great partnership with Azimut. Galleon, we actually sell Aquila power catamarans from China. So we're highly impacted. There's ways we're working through it with good partners, but it's had an impact. And it's had, that part of it's probably been inflationary to the industry. Not just that we're getting tariff for a galleon coming from Poland into the U.S. Yes, that's a big number, but all the inputs on building boats in the U.S., so the Boston Whaler Sea Ray, even though the numbers aren't big, I think it's flowing through, along with boat pricing going up, which probably another topic altogether. So yeah, big impact. We're navigating it, but I think it's going to continue to weigh on the bigger boat buyer, so to speak.
Yeah, that's been one of the issues that we've really been struggling in the U.S., where we've had maybe 15, 20 years ago, a boat would be sold in the U.S. You could get into the lifestyle in about $30,000 to $40,000, and the average household income for a boat buyer in the United States, 60% or more, were $100,000. So you have $100,000 net, annual income. Buying a $35,000 or financing a $35,000 boat is reasonable. And that same boat now is over $80,000. And so it is really impacting that lower end of the market, and where we're having a lot of discussions on how do we deal with that as an industry right now. I'm going to change the channel a little bit here. And at Baxter, you and your team, you've got and you spoke a little bit about this, but I'd love for you to expand. You've got a really well-deserved reputation on sustainability, and you've been a leader in that area in the market. You talked about the U.S. being behind on that front, and Europe being ahead. How do you measure sustainability as a CEO? Because in my experience, regardless of what industry I've been in, it's always about how do you drive that business case. Aside from it's the right thing to do, which it is the right thing to do, what is the business case from Safe Harbor's standpoint and your point of view?
So thankful for that question, because politically this flows in and out of favor. And like so many other things that move in and out of favor politically, you have to have the kind of the through line that doesn't get pulled in either direction, but that finds the purpose if you're going to do it, that finds the purpose in it, that can withstand pressure on either direction. And I'm so glad that Caitlin's here, and I think we're going to learn a lot from ICOMIA and from the European models because they're advanced in so many ways. But the way we've approached it, we align to GRI. So in the back of our sustainability report, we align to all of GRI. We do report to GRESB. This coming year, we'll be audited by GRESB. I don't know what our score will be. We have a lot that we can do. In California, we are in 26. I was telling somebody earlier today, we are required to measure emissions, and that will be auditable, I think, in 26 or 27. It's through Scope 2, and also to disclose our climate impact. And so we'll probably go ahead and do that everywhere. But those are things that I think they are outward-facing for the regulatory agencies, a language that they're comfortable with. More personally for us, our team, which is made up of our team that focuses on this issue, is made up of some of the senior leaders of the organization. We've identified targets that we have for ourselves that maybe don't make it into those reports, or they do, it's not the type of stuff that they can easily measure.
Can you share some of those? What are some of those KPIs?
So I will do. So with some inspiration from Blackstone, we took the initiative to say we wanted to have a 15% cut in our emissions footprint by the end of 26. It was not without some math. We thought we knew how we were going to get there. And it's with solar investment and electrification of we have about 450 vehicles. We're going to try to electrify that fleet in that time frame. But the point that I would like to make is that the lens was yours. Business, you said earlier today, and I love this, business drives the investment for sustainability, not the other way around. And if you don't do it that way, sustainability itself is not sustainable. And so we had to meet the return thresholds associated with that capital to then drive the outcome. Now, I think there's probably also a secondary beneficial effect. Our membership cares very much. The 49,500 families that I mentioned, they care very much about the sustainability of the business. They care about their impact on the environment and ours. And so we spend the time each year to put together a report, and I think there'll be a secondary benefit, which is they feel good about the product that they're participating in. But on a standalone basis, that investment is, we'll have to earn it out, but it's meant to pencil relative to our cost of capital. So, I mean, it has to do so, or else it won't continue to occur.
Really appreciate that. Let me do another pivot here, because Bryan, you have been somebody who's been really investing in the workforce and training side of your business. That's another massive issue across every single manufacturing and technical industry sector in the United States and worldwide. We know it's a global issue. So how are you tackling this challenge, particularly in terms of workforce training? How do you look at talent acquisition and development? What are the drivers of success within Suntex right now that you're measuring as a CEO when it comes to really talent development?
It's a lot there, and a great question. I think it starts fundamentally with us is it's defining your culture first and foremost. I feel like we did a good job with that from the beginning, and we believe it, and we do it every day. At the end of the day, we're a hospitality company. We may be in a REIT wrapper or a real estate wrapper, but fundamentally we're a hospitality company, and so everything we do is geared towards that. And the culture is very much about investing back into your team and into your people. More tactically, my COO is actually here, Rich Carter, who came from Troon for over 20 years and helped us first recognize that if we wanted to be a hospitality people, we needed to create and foster more hospitality professionals. So we went about that by literally we started this Florida State University, Redmond School of Hospitality, and just went and asked if we could speak to their students and tell them about marina operations, and you don't have to wear a suit and tie to be in hospitality. You can work outside, which ended up going really well. So we're 6 years into that program. Super proud of it. super proud that we've actually implemented a marina management curriculum within the first major university. So I'm not aware of anybody else has ever done that. And we're now recruiting out of 14 different hospitality schools around the country. So that's worked really well for us. We have and then again, you get into training. We start them with an internship program. I think we have 15 per year that go through that. Many of those go into, when they graduate, we call it MIT program, a manager in training program. And we have, I think we're up to 4 of those in that short period of time that are already at the GM level. So it's really, really worked well for us. And then it's about continued investment into them. I think Baxter even mentioned this morning. I 100% agree with it. We need to share the wealth that we're creating, with those team members, with their families. So we're it's a big deal to us to share as much of the opportunity Suntex is creating with those team members and investing back in them and those type of things. So but it really does start first by defining your culture and who you are as a company, and then you have to really go and invest in that.
So really helpful, thank you for that. One of the big findings that we came out with this year in our research, which was fairly disturbing, was the average age of the U.S. first-time boat buyer reached 60 years old. And if you look at the RV industry, it's at 49. This is largely because we have that 16% diversity share. Prior to going into COVID, we had 16% diversity. After the boom in the United States, we still had 16% diversity of our market in a 40% diverse consumer base. I look at this and go, you can instantly double your business by getting yourself to look the face of the country. There's no question that the market is there. When you look at luxury auto has absolutely killed it in this area in the United States, particularly in the Texas region, down in your area, where their leading consumers are Latino, or they're in Hispanic, or they're in Asian markets, are showing real growth in this area, as well as in African American. I just would like to ask each of you, one, are you measuring your diversity? If not, where are you seeing sort of that younger, diverse consumer entering? Where is that nexus right now within your business? And let's start, Brett, with you.
Yeah, we're doing a really poor job at measuring that. It's we're not a diverse industry by nature in the U.S. with the boaters. I would say, on talking about the age, if I can comment on that, and I don't have the data for this, but even up in the super yacht, when we look at Fraser, Northrop Johnson, then some of the larger yachts we're selling, it's a lot more young people chartering the product and also buying. So I don't have the data that says all of a sudden it's going to shift the scales. We've moved upstream as a company. Our industry right now is down to 2012 levels for the number of units sold, but dollars are higher than they ever were. So a boat that we're selling today, pre-COVID, is 40% more. Now, some of that's content and technology and great things, but it's just more expensive. So yet again, another challenge for the demographic or the age group on our industry. We have to solve that with customer service and a lot of other things, but it's a big challenge. I'll let these guys comment as well.
Yeah, where are you seeing the energy of the younger buyer and diverse buyer within your space?
Yeah, again, we don't sell boats. I'm going to go back to something I've kind of said a couple times, and it gets back to, I think it's you guys leading the effort of the Discover Boating. I think it is the collaboration. I think too long it's been the manufacturer focused on selling the boat to the boat dealer who sold the boat to the individual, and then they were kind of on their own. There was some unique operators of marinas, but they were mom and pop, they were one-off. There's never been scale. I think we're at this unique inflection point as an industry where you had some real scaled companies here that we need to work better collaboratively with everybody in our industry to make that experience seamless all the way through. And you hit it on the head. We have such an opportunity. We could double the size of our customer base by just getting diversity. I think it's that collaboration. It's working together to make it easier and take away the friction. And it's back into the training, teach things around making boating not so scary. And I think we have to. I don't think we have all the answers yet, but I think, Frank, I give you a lot of credit because I think you are trying very hard to bring us all together to help, solve this, which is only to the benefit of all of us.
Baxter, where are you seeing the energy and the youth and diversity energy within your business?
The only thing that I can add is those are spot-on answers, and I think the collaboration is, and education and awareness is something for all of us to chip in on. But I have seen some studies recently that the first-time buyers are increasing. So I think we're 80% European descent, and the first-time buyers are, even in our group, but I've seen a broader data set that it's trending, more diverse. Now, I think that has to do more with demographic shifts in the country, and that you have people who've, immigrants from first and second generation immigrants from other places, Asia, India, notably, are building wealth, and they're starting to get into boating, but it's been perceived, and probably really has been, something for the wealthier segments of society. And so I think it's naturally gonna move that way. I think our opportunity is to help it along by, coming together and messaging where we can through our channels.
Yeah, we're doing a big research project right now in NMMA for those who are interested in this topic that we'll be releasing for everyone in the industry. We're doing it under the Discover Boating banner, and we'll be sharing that information at Mets Trade and then openly on our website channels. So feel free to take that data. There'll be a lot of learnings as to how folks are moving. And as far as the auto industry, what they did is they, not only on the sales side, but on the service side, they brought in folks who were from that community, and they made sure that they were really targeting in that way. And I think our industry right now, that's the low-hanging fruit, where we can start to invite people who are boaters, who are people of color, and then they're the ones who are our face and voices going into those communities. We'll see a change just like the luxury auto did pretty quickly. Baxter, I want to jump back to you here on, we're seeing massive technological shifts going on. AI is coming in. It is absolutely changing search. It's changing how, you can't even go in a normal search now. Everything's right now going through the AI lens, and there's going to be winners and losers there right now. How is that changing your business? And last question here, how are you modifying, getting into taking advantage of these technologies going forward to really grow Safe Harbor?
Yeah, so about 6 months ago, I was hearing so much about AI. My brother's involved with AI. I sought out somebody who's sort of an expert and to tutor me on the topic. And I can say that I still don't, people use AI so many different ways. I still don't have a good comprehensive view, but in my simplistic way of thinking about it, I've broken it down into three categories, and they all have different application for our business. But the first one is kind of what I'd call simultaneous search, which is, there's some AI guys here, so I apologize if I butcher this, but these are the tools like OpenAI that you can send out a query to multiple LLMs and databases at the same time, and then kind of map the responses over each other and take the best of all as an answer to what you're looking for. And the way that we use that is quick research on a topic. So I don't know much about Brett. I'm going to meet him later today. I might want to learn about his history. You got to be careful because it can get all kinds of bad information and it's not accurate. Not in your case, probably.
I hope not.
But so that's the first one. The second one is these agentic solutions that are sort of like modules or models that are meant to go and do something, and they're supposed to evolve and learn while they're out there doing that. I actually think this one's going to be very powerful for our business on the service side, because from everything from inventory to the problem of the different manufacturers, I think the superyachts have something like 400 original OEM parts on them on average, and each one of those has a scope when it's deficient, what its obsolescence is, what its service is. And so when you think about the number of variables and the predictive maintenance that you could do in order to be making sure that those vessels aren't down when the owner wants to use them and when they're cruising, I think this is a problem for something like an agentic model to solve over time. So I think that one's going to be very powerful. And then the last one are these kind of, physical, I almost think of Star Wars or something where you have these physical bots walking around. You have humanoid-like creatures trying to fight each other for what reason, I don't know. And you have things, delivering packages via Amazon as if I didn't get them fast enough. I don't know how you guys are at home, but they're stacked up now. I can have drones deliver them to me. I don't see much application for that directly in our space. But what I will say is I'm encouraged in our industry, and I said this earlier when I was speaking, by how much is not at risk of AI. Because when you think about automated tasks in other asset classes from an employment perspective, whether that's knowledge work or whether that's physical labor, like if you're working in a warehouse, there are a lot of tasks that can remove, kind of entry-level labor. And it's dangerous, in fact, I think, for society not to have those jobs and to have them to, capitalists that own that technology. But it won't be the case for us because there's too many variables to catching a line on a super yacht or knowing when is a good time, to take it out with the tug. That's not something you can outsource to some, vehicle that's not manned. I don't think there's too much intuition and too much creativity needed by the decision maker in that case. And so anything experiential is probably that way. But I'm encouraged actually by the fact that we are so human in nature as an industry, because I think AI will struggle to replace a lot of what we fundamentally do.
Great note to end on. Bryan, Brett, Baxter, thank you so much for taking the time and coming over to Venice and suffering in this beautiful city.
Tough place.
Do we have some time?
We have some questions
We have
on
some
the
questions.
Telegram.
That's great.
And I'm just getting a big cheer from inside the cubicle. So yeah, definitely. And I would say this is really, realistically, the only way to ask a question, so please feel free to do it. All right, we've got a couple. I'll read them out. This is from Roberto. What do you think of boat rallies, collective trips organized for customers with several boats navigating all together?
Well, I can comment
Who
on
wants to
that
grab
'cause
that?
kind of the core of our business, and I mentioned my dad started the company. He always had the belief that it was about the experience, we have something called getaways, and when a customer buys a boat from us, we get them on a trip. We'll take 10 boats to a raft up for the day, or we'll take 100 boats to the Bahamas. And some people, the only trips they do are on these trips with other families. You call them rallies, we call them rendezvous, getaways, and events. It's a very, very powerful thing for our industry.
Totally agree. I think that's a great example of creating that emotional attachment for your customer base. Those are things they will never forget, and they talk about it with their friends and how special it is and the memories they created through those. It's a great example.
And I'll add one thing. We talked about collaboration, but our competition in boat sales, I'll comment probably, which relates to the marinas. Our competition is not the dealer down the street. It's the baseball field, football field, things that pull at a family, right? And if you can create an opportunity to say, hey, we're going to carve out Sunday to go boating with the family because we spent Thursday and Friday and Saturday on the baseball field, that's our competition. That's what we have to focus on. So that's how you bring that. You got to give them a reason to go boating.
In my world, in the sailboat world, there's a company called Oyster, and they run a very successful world rally every year. And most of the people who buy an Oyster buy it to do the world rally. And it keeps the resale value up as well, because there's always another family or a couple who want to do the rally next year. So it definitely works. Just very quickly, we've got two more questions. One is about houseboats and marinas. What do you think?
What do I think about houseboats at marinas?
Yeah.
Interesting one, because we operate about, Rich ought to correct me here, I think we're down to about 42 houseboats in the U.S., mostly in Kentucky and a couple in California. Again, I think I we really do like it because it does drive the experience. Something's different. It goes back to all the things we're talking about. In my perfect world, we could have a third party that ran all those businesses and wanted to pay rent. But again, I think our notion's always been, if we can't find somebody to partner with, a strategic partner that's going to run these different types of businesses to make the experience great, then we're going to go ahead and do it. And that's kind of been our mantra. And again, I think it's a great way to go spend some time with a family, and we're all about that.
Yeah, this is for Baxter. It's from Ethan Zone. What do you think was the main and principal driver for Blackstone entering the marina market?
Well, we showed them the investment probably 2 or 3 times over the course of the 10 years, and they passed on it for the first 2 or 3 times, and each time they wished they hadn't because they saw that it grew and it did well. And so I think they finally just said, we're not going to miss it again. You know, we can't afford to say no to this again. All of these private equity funds have gotten so large, and in particular the infrastructure funds are growing at an incredible rate. For a whole host of reasons. And I think they're just looking for places to put capital that match with what their view is. And they really did the data that I was showing this morning. They had done their independent work. That came from a study we did together. But they really did their work to look at the tailwinds that are taking place globally, because they are a global investor. I think they're 1.2 trillion of investment globally now. And they found that these sort of mega trends that are taking place are going to continue for the foreseeable future. And they thought the Marinas business is they would say, the dead center of the fairway of where those tailwinds should positively affect the business. So they are, by nature, they invest on theses, and this is a thesis that they feel is very strong. And so that was probably the intellectual impetus.
We should all thank Baxter for paving the way for us.
We'll see. There are some other questions, but we will be discussing Marina Groups on Friday, so I'm going to leave it there. We have a lot to get through. Frank, gentlemen, it has been full of insight. It really has. There's a lot to unpick. So thank you so much for your time and enthusiasm.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
That was fun. Thanks for doing that. Let's do it again sometime. That's cool.